Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are on this fast forward planet. This is a pop up session of Sustain What, my Columbia Climate School webcast. So none of you have advance notice for this, but you'll see it popping into your feed wherever you are. And do share it if you can, now or later. This is Andy Revkin. I've been writing about climate change and related matters since the 1980s. One of those old guys. And I've been writing about energy issues and environmental issues through that much of that time as well. And here today, we're going to talk about, of course, the Inflation Reduction, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is close to, well, $369 billion of which over the next 10 years will be aimed at advancing this country's goals on climate change and clean energy. A big chunk has to happen on what we call the grid, all those wires around us, and how we use energy. Today, we're going to be talking to folks in the arts, architecture particularly, Jin Choi and Thomas Shine, about a vision they have for how to perhaps make the public discourse over the power line part of this problem, to tamp it down a little bit, to get it more, to get people thinking more about the adventure and the almost heroic challenge of the transformation that needs to take place. You're in the Boston area, or the North Shore of Massachusetts. I'm further up the coast in Maine, my new location up in Penobscot Territory near Acadia National Park, and I'm really glad you could join us today. So, just briefly, I'm showing here a bit of the public discourse on this these days. Looks like this. You have Joe Manchin, a West Virginia senator, who was holding up the bill for the sake of a more conservative constituency for whom jobs and inflation were really primary issue, and who finally helped to craft this bill. It has lots of elements that still have to play out in the fall. There are other things that couldn't go into this bill that will be adjudicated in Congress in September, October, maybe as long as December. And part of that's about what's called permitting reform. One reason we don't have a lot of infrastructure and a modern grid is it's really hard to build new things in America. That wasn't always the case. So I'm going to show some imagery here that will take us briefly to your work. First of all, it's pretty clear we need a lot more transmission. Robinson Meyer, who's been writing about this for a while now in The Atlantic, I really like this headline and deck on his piece recently. This was last year, actually. Unfortunately, I care about power lines now. He says, if America wants to fight climate change or enjoy the benefits of a modern economy, it must get much better at building electricity transmission. Yikes is the next word. And because I don't think any of us look at that image right there and immediately go, oh, yay, hooray, let's put that next to my house. Right? Let's go to I want to go to your website and your work. So you've done a lot of public works and I assume many other kinds of commissions. Maybe just talk a little bit about your general history. What kinds of things have you done? What drew you to architecture and design as opposed to any other thing you could have done with your skills?
Well, first of all, we're a Boston-based architecture firm, and we both are architects, and we met at actually architecture school. We're a husband and wife team.
Okay.
Yes, and we were drawn to architecture in particular because I have previously studied art before I joined architecture school, and Thomas has an engineering background before he became an architect. So the combination of the two, I thought that it was a clever marriage between art and engineering. And because of our unique combination of different backgrounds, we started to be more interested in something that is, at least back then in 2007 and 8, when we first designed the Land of Giants, it was a very sort of a unique little niche for that never was actually a design field for anyone. It was just an engineering field, as you know, for infrastructure. engineers. But we started to get interested in what's around us, infrastructure, transmissions in particular, which was prompted by learning about this open call international design competition held by the national power company in Iceland, which you are looking at right now. Maybe Thomas can explain a little bit.
It was a competition that I stumbled across for Landsnet, which is the transmission company in Iceland, and they open international design competition for any improvement to the grid. It could be anything you like.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, interesting.
Right, and so I tend to be more of a dreamer than Jin, and so I'm always distracted by these nice things, and slightly bored by whatever I have in front of me.
So because strictly speaking, this is not a design field that typical architects look at, right, or look into or explore even. And I mean, we should actually credit Icelandic power company who came up with the idea of holding an international ideas competition for, in particular, for the high voltage transmission towers, because that actually opened a huge genre. It became we became sort of a pioneer in this field.
Of making beautiful infrastructure.
Yes.
So that other people have made nice buildings and nice infrastructure, but the idea that something as sort of mundane as a pylon or a transmission tower could be an attraction instead of an eyesore was sort of the revolutionary thinking, mostly Jin, but we did it together.
So that the idea is that they have to be there. They're the product of necessity, and more so, as Andy just described right now. And if you have to have this kind of a device to transmit the power that we generated safely and fast and economically, then we will have to have this kind of an infrastructure everywhere. Then if we're going to end up having some of these structures, then don't they need to be, considered as something that is public entity that we can actually make it beautiful? Because rather than creating a public art separately and generating the infrastructure as just a necessity, if we can combine the two, then can't we just kill two birds with one stone?
Sure.
So that's how
it started. But interestingly, when we did the competition, we had designed a male and a female, but the first image you showed has just male, and so when it came to adjudicating, we got an award. We didn't get first place, but we got an award, and the people running the competition said they would have given us first place, but because we didn't show a male and a female. And it's a good socialist country being Iceland.
And they didn't want to have a prejudice.
They didn't want to establish prejudice or show sexism, and so they gave us an honorary award. But we had actually designed both a male and female.
So I had a sketch in my little sketchbook, which I have right now as well, and I had a sketch of a female as well as male. But
you can see it right now.
Right, but at just before the deadline for the submission of the competition, I became really, really, really ill, so I couldn't finish the female design. So we submitted the male design, and so I just showed that sketch right there and then to all the organizers at the power company, and they all were excited and asked us, "Oh, can you actually really then complete it, and resubmit it?" And that's what we did, and hence you can see the nice couple together holding.
Well, it's and this is still percolating, right? This hasn't physically been built anywhere, correct?
No. There's been lots of interest, most recently from Saudi Arabia for their line project, which I'm not sure what will happen with that. And also in the Southwest in the U.S., there's a green energy project in New Mexico, and this was actually a slightly different design, but some of our other tower designs were included for that. We took the attitude. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, keep going.
So there are two approaches you can have to infrastructure design, and particularly transmission towers. You can either make them an object to look at, a beautiful object like the giants are, or you can make them a minimal object, so they're much svelter, lighter, and visually less intrusive on the landscape.
Right. Oh, and there's another drastic but expensive and quite unhealthy solution, which is just to bury the whole thing underground.
Or bury them.
Very
Yeah.
expensive.
There's the
Right.
line. Yes,
And,
yes,
and
yes.
berry is expensive, but so the choice seems to be to do nothing, which is what everyone sort of does right now. They just keep going the way they're going,
Yeah.
or to make it, and then we give them two more choices to make it, beautiful, so it becomes a tourist attraction, an object that people are proud to have in their landscape.
Right.
In fact, we did a proposal for Norway in Stavanger, and the mayor of the local community, the district, he said that they have to get permission to put the tower through the line through all the districts, right? And if one district says no, it kills the line. And he said he would let the line go through his district, but only if they were the only district to get the giants and no one else got the giants.
So it's actually flipping around to become.
Yeah, it's a very interesting kind of turn of the the thought, the change of the thought. Because the town is called Forsan, and it's near the beautiful fjord area in the national park, and they really wanted it to be their unique feature to attract tourism, and therefore
help the town
economy
on the map
as well. And so that's one of the ways of looking at it and turning them into beautiful public art, functioning beautiful art, so that they can be the landmark, also the destination to visit. And interestingly, these were never built before, but interestingly, that reminds me that the LensNet, the competition organizers, actually received many emails and phone calls and letters from random people who asked, where are they?
They're traveling to Iceland, would like to visit them.
Can we visit them?
And they had to.
That's so great.
That prompted them eventually to. Iceland had an economic crisis, if you remember.
Right after we submitted a couple, female and male, they had a financial crisis, which sort of put everything on hold.
And it was the call from the people and the emails from the
saying that where can we visit it, and that actually prompted
them to contact us again.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Engineering and the whole process and development with them. So there are realistic designs, not just pretty pictures on the paper. And then subsequently, we're invited to pick the site actually with the tourist board and the power company in Stavanger in Norway to realize one of the giants as special towers in there as well. And following that, it was 2013 or thereabout, we were invited to look at them as a series of special towers in Marseille, France, as a sort of part of the celebration of the European cities. So that's all what happened. But then the other ways of doing it is, of course, like Thomas suggested, is making it really minimal, so that saves a lot of materials and really value engineering it, but minimal design, so that it's sort of beautiful, but sort of not really drawing too much attention to it. But those are the two attitudes.
And the way when people usually approach us, it's usually because the power company has a problem. They have to put lines through a national park or some area of outstanding natural beauty, and people come to the power company, and they don't want a huge power grid over their beautiful backyard, and so they come to us to say, could we use the giants or one of these other designs, as a way of satisfying the community needs and the power needs. But it's difficult for all involved, actually, except us.
Well, it is. This is one of these really thorny issues. I'm going to show some video in a second from the 1980s and 90s, when journalism actually did a really good job of scaring the hell out of people about power lines. And it, as one scientist said at the time, it's the kind of fear that doesn't go away quickly. When 3 Mile Island happened, and for nuclear power. So there's this uphill battle, and I think any tool that gets people to stop and think and regard the question in a different way, as you said, if you can have towns competing for the design, that feels like a wonderful thing. And now I have to say, I may periodically freeze because I'm on a satellite internet here in rural Maine. So if I do, just keep speaking. But I wanted to ask you, have you already done like a cost assessment? Is it roughly
Well,
the same
so-
as a conventional tower?
Well, yes and no. So that when we worked with Iceland, they said, ignore the cost, just design what you like.
Mhm.
But other people have asked us for cost assessments and to do designs. And the answer is essentially the cost of a pylon, apart from the initial engineering cost, is the cost of the steel.
Right.
And so we essentially pull out the bits of steel until it meets whatever cost they need. And so you can do them, there's a balance between cost and beauty, but you can certainly make them the same price as conventional towers, ignoring initial engineering costs. But if you add a little more steel, they get a little more beautiful. That's essentially where it is.
Right, right.
Not quite a linear relationship, but
That's so funny.
but of course there has to be a balance. Yeah.
Yeah. So hold on a second. I want to take us down memory lane here. My friends at Retro Report, which is a periodic TV program and web program, they go back and visit the news as it happened and reflect on what has or hasn't happened since. I'm just going to show a minute or two of this to get the idea. So back in 1987.
We have a report tonight about an unattractive part of the country's landscape that may also be hazardous to your health.
In the late 1980s, news reports that electromagnetic fields from power lines could spark a cancer epidemic
New and troubling evidence.
had the public and the power companies running scared.
Is there a cancer risk associated with electric power lines?
Magnetic fields may cause cancer, especially in children.
This may be as significant as anything that's happened since the understanding that smoking causes cancer.
Once something like this becomes part of our collective memory, there is no way to remove it from that memory.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really
So that,
powerful.
yeah, and especially that last line, it's, I'm hoping that what you, well, among other things, I'm hoping that the fact that there's now $370 billion, many billions of which are targeted at the grid, getting the grid more functional, that we're obviously going to have this conversation again about power lines. But now, to me, the aesthetic question is certainly one that has to be in the mix. I think artists too often are not, in the conversation when we think about these things. It's mostly technical, gigawatt, terawatt debates. And had you thought about that? It sounds like when you were proposing this initially, it wasn't so much to overcome necessarily public antipathy. There was this sort of, vision of some grand ideas. But could you do you have some hope that this could play a role that way?
Oh yes, of course, of course. We briefly mentioned that it can be a landmark, and also that can help the town's economy by bringing the tourism. But
it wasn't a political debate we were entering.
No, it's not a political debate. But we really thought that it could help ease the social conflict, and which becoming a political crisis oftentimes. We were approached by a Welsh government a few years ago, actually particularly about this. But I was born in South Korea, and I was aware of the social conflict that arose in Seoul, South Korea, as well as some other areas, rural areas near Busan, where people protested against the new grid line, and so much so that because not because of the health risk. I don't think that they were concerned about that as much as the fact that it'll the aesthetic reasons, because it's again the idea of not in my backyard. It'll the property values. That's what they were mostly concerned about because of the aesthetics in particular. So they were very, very aggressive, and that became one of the main political points that for the next election, I was told. But anyway, yeah. So having been aware of these issues when we actually learned about this competition, can it really? It was really kind of refreshing. First of all, can design really change that mindset, But after the internet, we had a sort of like a viral response to our pylon couples in the internet.
when we first published them on the internet, we had more web traffic than our server could handle. But it's been a couple of years now.
We're just small guys. It was astonishing.
Yeah, it was really astonishing. And I got a phone call one morning when it made sort of major newspapers, and then the media started calling us, the TV and radio. And I got a phone call from Australia at 5 o'clock in the morning, wanting permission to use the images and interview us. And then I think I got a phone call 2 hours later from China or somewhere, I forget where it was. And they said, "I hope we're not waking you up." And said, "No, we just spoke to Australia. We've been up for a couple of hours." It was really quite a sensation when it came out.
It was really amazingly passionate response, and they were highly commending our work, and some Italian newspaper in particular. I just love those that quote. They said that it's a poem to the eyes.
Yeah, poem for the eyes.
Yeah, and that actually, I don't know. I hope that helped us.
Yeah, I think it helped us, but again, it wasn't that we were aware of the visual impact and the visual pollution and the idea that people don't like power lines. It's actually why Iceland held the competition, because they were a treeless country. They removed all the trees, planted them again now, or some of them. And so when they put up a power line, and you can see it from miles away across the landscape, and it has this beautiful landscape, and you put a standard tower there, and it sort of wrecks it. And so we were aware that there's that dimension to it. And even now they have the problem. They still can't build, or it's very difficult for them to build new power lines and towers. So this is still a viable solution as we see it, but politically, the climate has to be right, I suppose.
Right. I think that it definitely helps not only just us as an architecture practice, but helps us looking at it in a different light. It could be something else. There is something beyond what we see in the transmission. There's something else going on. I think it could be something else potentially. Is the future that we started to see through these the proposals of giants, and that to me was very, very rewarding and almost heartfelt. Just very, very, very nice to see it.
Well, it's beautiful. You're reminding me of the work of an artist I know here in the Pennsylvania, Stacy Levy, who she kind of went with what in 1970 Robert Smithson had done, the spiral jetty, which was really just a piece of art, right? It actually is pretty intrusive and had environmental impacts in the Great Salt Lake, which is shriveling away, of course. But she started creating these spiral wetlands, which they're actually art that remediates. They're alive, and they're sucking nutrients out of an overloaded lake. And what you're doing is sort of, again, similar to that, taking on a piece of infrastructure that on its own doesn't really have many merits, except for the fact that it can be carrying massive amounts of clean electricity, and you're giving it a sort of a personality. So I more of that kind of art, the better. It does hark back a little bit too. I put together some images from Philadelphia, when they created their first water system. It was really a work of art. The WPA projects in the Great Depression really had an artistic quality to them.
Sure.
There's a wastewater treatment plant near Seattle, Washington called Brightwater that has it's very sculptural. And so again, I think, at least to me, the work you're doing, I hopefully, maybe it could get presented. There's some congressional hearings coming up on this issue of what to do with transmission. And if I was a congressperson, I might want to show a picture like one of yours. So we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah,
that'd be lovely.
That'd be really nice. Yeah, something. I would like to see something happening in the field of infrastructure altogether.
Yeah, well, it's been great. This is just a brief pop-up hello. I'd like to get you back on sometime. Let's see if we can get to push this forward a little bit more. Just again, this is the Columbia Climate School Sustain What webcast, a little pop-up opportunity to meet with a brilliant artist and a brilliant engineer working together through architecture to literally power the world in a very creative, forward-looking way. One of the things that has frustrated me, yeah, I'm an environmentalist at heart, but too much of the environmental movement historically has been yelling the word no, as opposed to saying, here's the vision we're looking for. And
Yeah.
I think to me, your work, which I'll just share one more time, is a way of flipping the narrative.
Yeah, hope so.
Yeah, we really do hope so too. Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity to talk with you about what we feel really dear to us.
Great. Well, I'm really glad I found the work, and let's keep at it together. Anyone who's watching now or later, you can see information at the bottom of that little scrolling bar tells you how to get a hold of me. Please share the video wherever you're watching it with others, and tell me what irks you or excites you about the energy future. Thanks again, Jen Choi and Thomas Shine, and maybe we'll actually meet up in person someday too.
That'd be nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Take care.